Please adhere to YouTube select guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Alrighty, so today I'm going to be smoking and reviewing the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico, which contain 9 milligrams of tar, 0.8 milligrams of nicotine, and 9 milligrams of carbon monoxide, and are the lightest cigarette that is a part of the new Lucky Strike Origins line of cigarettes, which appears to be a Mexico-exclusive line of additive-free cigarettes that was first introduced sometime in early to mid-2024 to test the waters and see whether additive-free cigarettes can be a viable market segment like they are in the United States and some other countries around the world. As a whole, I certainly am looking forward to trying these cigarettes right here a little bit more so than not, as I'm curious to find out how they will line up against their other counterparts in the Lucky Strike Origins line of cigarettes. And I'm also curious to find out how these will line up against other Mexican market cigarettes and just other additive-free cigarettes as a whole. But on the topic of additive-free cigarettes, I do want to acknowledge just one thing real quick, and that is that I don't know 100% for sure if these cigarettes are actually additive-free natural cigarettes or not, because it doesn't actually say anywhere on the packaging that these cigarettes are actually additive-free or natural. It doesn't say it on the front of the packaging, doesn't say it on the back of the packaging, not on this side, not on this side, not on the top, not on the bottom. The only thing we get that is kind of something we can infer as meaning that these cigarettes are additive-free is this text right here, which just says tobacco plus water. Usually in the United States, the text that says tobacco plus water is meant to infer, is meant to kind of make you think that the cigarettes are indeed additive-free natural cigarettes. But usually in the United States, to back up the whole tobacco plus water statement, it says natural or additive-free. It doesn't say that anywhere on this packaging though, and so as such I can't say for sure that these cigarettes are actually additive-free or not. But I can say for sure that these cigarettes are certainly marketed as being additive-free. And so as such, I'm going to be assuming that they are additive-free for this video today. But what is Lucky Strike as a brand? Well, Lucky Strike is an old American brand of tobacco products that was first introduced in 1871 by R.A. Patterson, a tobacco manufacturer from Richmond, Virginia. And at that time, Lucky Strike as a brand was very different than the Lucky Strike we know today. It was made by a different producer, and at that time, Lucky Strike as a brand was not even a cigarette brand, instead being a plug chewing tobacco brand, with cigarettes only being introduced later on down the line. However, starting in 1905, the Lucky Strike as we know it today started to become more of a reality, because in 1905 the American Tobacco Company purchased R.A. Patterson along with Lucky Strike as a brand and started marketing Lucky Strike quite heavily, with the brand reaching its peak of popularity in the 1930s, at that time being the best-selling brand in the United States. And from that point onwards, Lucky Strike has continued to become quite the legendary brand of cigarettes, never quite reaching the peak it once had, but still being quite the notable brand and still being quite the household name, to say the least. Today, Lucky Strike as a brand is owned and produced by R.J. Reynolds. And today, in the United States, Lucky Strike is very much a legendary brand of cigarettes, and it is very much a household name, but it is by no means as popular as it once was. Outside of the United States, in Mexico, let's say, for example, Lucky Strike is quite the notable and popular brand, as you might expect. But instead of being made by R.J. Reynolds, it is instead made by British American Tobacco. And that's what Lucky Strike is as a brand, more so than not today. From what I can tell within Mexico, Lucky Strike cigarettes are a little bit more popular than not, but not like the most popular by any means. It's probably in the top 5 best-selling brands, if I had to guess, though, which is probably better than Lucky Strike's. That's probably better than how Lucky Strike as a brand performs in the United States, though, I will admit. And honestly, Lucky Strike as a brand is probably more popular outside the United States today than inside, which is pretty interesting in all honesty. But that's what Lucky Strike is as a brand, more so than not. But what are my expectations for this pack right here? Well, if I had to guess, taste-wise, I'm probably going to get a sort of semi-spicy, mildly sweet tobacco taste with a decent amount of airiness as well. I'm thinking the taste I'm going to get as a whole is going to be that sort of a slightly cigar-y, spicy, nutty tobacco taste with a very slight undertone of like molasses, brown sugar, and maybe a little bit of some other sort of sweet undertone as well. That's kind of the taste I'm expecting from this pack right here. And overall, I am expecting the flavor of the cigarette to be a little bit more airy than not, I definitely have to say. I'm thinking body-wise, the body's probably going to be a medium airy body. I'm thinking the airflow is probably going to be perfectly fine, but the draw is probably going to be a medium heavy draw due to the airiness, due to the amount of perforation on the filter that I'm expecting from these cigarettes right here. I'm thinking the roughness and smoothness of these cigarettes is probably going to be a low 3 out of 4, and I'm thinking strength-wise probably a low 3 out of 4 as well. Those are my expectations for this pack right here, and as a whole, I have high expectations for this pack right here, I will admit, although I am expecting the taste and just everything about the cigarette in general to be much more airy than not, as these are the lightest cigarettes that are a part of the new Lucky Strike Origins line of cigarettes, of course. But now that I've covered my expectations, I do suppose without further ado, it is time for me to go ahead and start on the packaging of this pack right here. After I go over the packaging, I'm going to go ahead and get the cellophane all off. I'm going to go and let you guys know what the quality of the packaging is like, what it looks like without the cellophane on, and just what it's like in general. Then after that, I'm going to go and get the pack all opened up. I'm going to go and get the foil all out. I'm going to go and let you guys know what these cigarettes themselves actually look like, what they feel like, what the quality of them is like, and what they smell like, and everything like that kind of thing. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get one of the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico all lit up, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know how these cigarettes actually are. Then after that, I'm going to go and give you guys my final thoughts on these cigarettes, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and give these a rating as well. But first off, as said, we got to start with the packaging, which is definitely trying to drive home the fact that these are an additive-free cigarette, to say the least. And to drive that thought process home, I have a pack of American Spirit Blue cigarettes with me today. Do we see any similarities between these two packs? Yeah, I think I see a couple similarities between these two packs. For example, the blue on both is pretty much the exact same. This one has a red circle right here. This one has a red circle right here. This one has black text. This one has black text. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing some similarities between these two packs, frankly put. If you know what American Spirit Blues look like, you're definitely going to be thinking that these are additive-free cigarettes for sure. And honestly, the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico really do look like a slightly more simple and maybe just slightly different and slightly more modern version of the sort of American Spirit packaging that is a little bit more classic than not, in my personal opinion. This is a very classic look to it. This is a little bit more of a modern look to it. So this is sort of a more modern, additive-free look, I definitely have to say. Definitely interesting, to say the least. These do look quite similar, in my personal opinion, which is pretty amusing if you ask me. I'm going to go and put this pack back, though I think I have made my point. But yeah, this packaging is definitely meant to kind of just drive home the fact that these are additive-free cigarettes, quote-unquote, even though it doesn't actually say that these cigarettes are additive-free or not, but it's really trying to drive that fact home, and the color is another way they're using to drive that fact home. Let's go ahead and actually start covering the details of the packaging, though. At the very top right here, we can see there is a warning label, as is required on all packs of cigarettes from Mexico. All packs of cigarettes from Mexico are required to have a warning label that covers up 30% of the front, 100% of one side, and 100% of the back of the packaging. And this warning label right here is indeed a very graphic warning label, to say the least. It just says fumar causa gangrena right there, which just says like smoking causes gangrene. I don't know how true that is, frankly put, but maybe it is. I have absolutely no idea. But this is like the worst case of gangrene I have ever heard of. That is disgusting, frankly put. They're just putting straight gore on the front of the packaging. That ain't gonna stop me from smoking cigarettes, though, by any means. We ball this gore, it ain't gonna stop me. And honestly, that just makes this pack look a little bit more badass, if you ask me. At least a little bit of gore kind of thing, make the pack just look a little bit more badass. Oh, certainly no complaints on my behalf. That is for sure. But moving on from the warning label right here, we move below into a very bright blue background. That is, of course, very much the exact same blue that we see on American Spirit Blues, frankly put. At the very top right here, we can just see in black, it just says bright right there, with 3 little tobacco leaves under that. There's two of them are kind of, two of those tobacco leaves are kind of faded out just a little bit, with one of them being a little bit darker than not. The most full flavored version of the Lucky Strike Origins line of cigarettes has all three of these sort of all black with none faded out. The medium variety has just one faded out, and since this is the lightest one, it has two of them faded out, and that is meant to basically just be a strength thing kind of thing. Like, this is one tobacco leaf out of three instead of being 3 out of 3 or something like that kind of thing. It's just meant to be something to tell you the relative strength of these cigarettes, I do suppose. But that's pretty much all that's going on up here. In the middle, we can see a very sort of modern Lucky Strike sort of logo, I definitely have to say. Going around the red Lucky Strike logo, we can see the blue gets a little bit more gray, a little bit more dark, I definitely have to say. And then we can see the red itself inside that blue is very much a sort of dark, rich, almost sort of blood color, I definitely have to say. Like, this definitely looks like kind of a photo of like a red blood cell or something like that kind of thing, if you ask me at least. But we can see that this does indeed have a little bit of a sort of three-dimensionality to it when it comes to the design itself. But we can see there's some like dark lines right here and whatnot that just kind of make it look like the center of the red right there is kind of just like pressed in just a little bit, like it just goes down a little bit further than it actually does, and it gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional sort of like almost button-like look, I'd have to say. And in the middle of that sort of area that looks like it goes down just a little bit just says Lucky Strike right there, all in black in very bold text, I definitely have to say. And then under that it just says Origins right there in a little bit of a smaller text, I definitely have to say. And we can see the red itself is not like a consistent red by any means. In the bottom it's sort of a bright red right here, but towards the sides right here it gets a little bit darker, and with the ring going around that sort of sunken in area, it's a little bit dark right here, a little bit bright right here, and that definitely gives it a little bit more three-dimensionality than not, although this packaging definitely does still look very corporate designed, if you ask me at least, and honestly a little bit more corporate designed than the I was about to say the Lucky Strike packaging we have right here, but no, the American Spirit packaging we have right here. Even though this is corporate designed, this still looks a little bit more corporate designed, and I think it's really the sort of modern-ish sort of look that makes it look a little bit more corporate designed than not, frankly put. But it's not a bad look by any means, and from a distance this is very, very, very distinctly an additive-free cigarette. It's very distinctly a Lucky Strike, and it's very distinctly a Lucky Strike Origins cigarette, as well as no other Lucky Strikes on the market in Mexico have a sort of bright blue background like this pack right here. Moving on from the Lucky Strike sort of logo itself right here, moving on below that, we can see it just says tobacco plus water right there, all in black. And then to the side of that, it just says that this pack contains 20 cigaros right there, kind of just a little bit sideways, I'd have to say, or actually it says it like that to actually put it correctly, but it just says contains 20 cigaros right there, which just means that this pack contains 20 cigarettes. And that's pretty much all there is to the front of the packaging. It is a little bit more simple than not. There's really not too much going on the front of the packaging, but what is going on does a lot better of a job than not. The Lucky Strike logo itself is much more distinct than not up close and from a distance. You immediately know that this is indeed a Lucky Strike cigarette due to the blue background. I at least immediately think that this is indeed an additive-free cigarette, just because the sort of bright color sort of thing that I've seen on additive-free cigarettes in the United States and on other cigarettes around the world has really been kind of ingrained in my mind. So when I see like a bright blue packaging or a bright yellow packaging or a bright sort of orange packaging, I immediately think like additive-free. So this definitely makes you just think additive-free just right off the bat kind of thing. Up close, it makes it even more obvious that these are marketed as being additive-free cigarettes due to the tobacco plus water text. As a whole, I think this packaging does a very good job functionality-wise, and while it's not by any means my favorite look aesthetically, I think this packaging does look pretty good, and I do think it does its job very well. So I certainly cannot complain too much about this packaging, to say the least. It's decent packaging that does its job very well, if I do say so myself. Moving on from this side of the packaging though to the side right here, we can see we get once again that blue background just going all the way down at the very top right here. It just says BAT, British American Tobacco, with this being the British American Tobacco logo itself, and that is all in black. Then below that it just says Lucky Strike right there. And then moving on below that, we just see the tar, nicotine, and carbon monoxide levels. These cigarettes of course contain 9 milligrams of tar, 0.8 milligrams nicotine, and 9 milligrams of carbon monoxide. Then under that it just says British American Tobacco, SADCV, Francisco 1, Maduro, 2750 PTE, Call Central, Monterrey, NL, CP 64000 MR, Hecho, and Mexico. So with that text, we can say that the British American Tobacco Company that's located in Mexico is located in Monterrey, which is a city in northern Mexico, if I remember correctly. At least we can say from the Hecho and Mexico text that these cigarettes are indeed made in Mexico as well. And then under all of that text, it just says www.batmexico.com, and then under that it just has a phone number, 800-400-5000. So I guess that's like their adult consumer helpline and whatnot. Moving on below this text right here, we just see it just says Para Venta Exclusiva in Mexico, which just means for exclusive sale in Mexico, basically just saying, hey, if these cigarettes are smuggled across the border to the United States, you're not allowed to sell them, and that's meant to make it very obvious very quickly that these cigarettes are not for sale anywhere but Mexico. And then below that, we just get the barcode right there, just a very barcode-like look, nothing too special by any means. Moving on to the other side of the package, we can see we get a warning label. As said, warning labels are required on 30% of the front, 100% on one side, and 100% of the back on all Mexican market cigarettes. And it just says on this side, fumar es causa de amputación, which I assume just means that smoking causes amputations or something like that kind of thing. I don't know about that, but hey, maybe, I don't know. Then on the back, it just says Riesgo de diabetes, which I think just means like risk of diabetes. Just says fumar aumenta la probabilidad de padecer diabetes tipo 2 hasta en casi el doble en comparación con las personas que no fuman. Now, I will admit, my pronunciation of everything right there was probably absolutely horrible. But from what I can tell, at least, that just means like smoking can increase the probability of getting diabetes type 2, or just type 2 diabetes. And I think it just says you're going to have like double the probability when compared to people that do not smoke. I'm pretty sure that's what it says. I did not actually translate that before this video today, but if I had to guess, that's probably what it says. Then under all of that, it just says these, of course, contain nicotine. Just says contain nicotina, and then just says aumenta el nivel de glucosa en sangre e incrementa la resistencia a la insulina. I don't speak Spanish, so my pronunciation is definitely not very good. But if I had to guess, that just means that nicotine can augment the glucose levels and can increment and give you a resistance to insulin, which is an issue if you are diabetic, of course. I don't know how true that actually is. I've heard varying claims and whatnot, but who knows? In all honesty, it's not going to stop me from smoking cigarettes by any means. Then under all of that, it just says Línea de la vida, si quieres dejar de fumar, podemos arredarte. I'm trying to pronounce everything correctly, but like podemos, I think I kind of have that. Probably not, in all honesty, but AYU. I think I'd struggle to pronounce that if it was in English too. Ardata. I don't know how to pronounce that in all honesty, but then it just says 800-911 2000 right there, which is just like their quit smoking line and whatnot. So this is basically just telling you call our number to quit smoking and everything like that kind of thing. And that's pretty much all that's going on the back of the packaging and this side right here. Moving on to the top of the packaging, we see a blue border on either side, and then we can just see the Lucky Strike logo itself as we saw on the front of the packaging, just in the middle right there. That's basically, this is the top of the packaging, pretty much just has a miniaturized version of what we see on the front of the packaging. Nothing really too special by any means. Moving on to the bottom, we see something a little bit different. We get that blue background once again, and it just says Lucky Strike right there, all in black, like it says on this side right here, but of course a little bit bigger. And then to the side of that, we get a little bit of a black square right there with some sort of like product code or something like that right there kind of thing. And that just says 0661 I038P606J8606L7822280. I want to say that's what it says. Could be wrong though. But it's pretty much all that's going on the bottom of the packaging, and that's pretty much all that's going on with the packaging as a whole. Overall, functionality is good. Aesthetics are pretty decent, although not the greatest by any means. This pack is by no means a work of art, unlike some other packaging that I am a really big fan of, but it's decent packaging that does its job well, and it makes it very obvious that these are indeed additive-free Lucky Strike cigarettes. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get the cellophane all off just real quick, if I possibly can. just like that. Got the top all off. Let's go and get the bottom all off as well. There we go. Let's go ahead and throw the cellophane in my backpack just like that. And now let's go ahead and just feel what the packaging actually feels like just real quick. I'd have to say as a whole, it's very much that of a just printed paperboard texture, a little bit glossy kind of thing, a little bit sticky kind of under hands. Yeah, very much just a printed paperboard texture, nothing really too special by any means. No texture changes anywhere on the packaging, I definitely have to say. Yeah, pretty much just printed paperboard, frankly put, nothing really too special by any means. The overall quality of the packaging is average. It's nothing super special. And does this pack look better with the cellophane off than on? Yes, 100% it does, I would definitely have to say. Before I go ahead and get this pack all opened up, I need to just scratch my arm real quick. I think I got bit by a mosquito or something, like under my watch. I'm not exactly sure, but under my watch just got a little bit itchy just for the last minute or so. Go and put that back, and I'm gonna go and take a little bit of a sip of water real quick, as well as my throat has been dying just a little bit. Excuse me. But now that I've taken a little bit of a sip of water, and now that I've scratched under my watch, I do suppose now it is time for me to go ahead and get this pack all opened up, and I do suppose it is time for me to go and take a look what the inside of this pack actually looks like and everything like that kind of thing. Taking a look at the inside of the cigarette lid right here, we can see there is nothing, there's literally nothing going on. There's like nothing, I was about to say nothing special going on, but no, there's literally nothing going on at all. Taking a look at the cigarette insert right here, we can see the blue itself matches the blue of the background right here quite well. It's maybe a little bit lighter, but it's much more similar than not, I definitely have to say. There's nothing really too much going on the cigarette insert itself right here, though, I will acknowledge. And there's, it just looks pretty basic as a whole, just goes down just like that kind of thing. It doesn't look particularly unique, and there's no sort of text on it or anything like that kind of thing. The foil itself isn't actually a foil, it's actually a paper, and on that paper we could just see it just has like a recycling symbol, just sort of a triangle with arrows kind of pointing at each other over and over and over again. That is of course a recycling symbol, and it just has that just over and over and over again. Does not actually say Lucky Strike anywhere on the packaging. Now y'all might think that this paper is really cool and everything like that kind of thing, because they're being really good for the nature. Like, I mean, like, hey, American Spirit does that kind of thing. They do paper because it's really good for nature and everything like that kind of thing. And they're like one of the only brands in the United States that currently does paper for all of their cigarettes to be good for nature and everything like that kind of thing. So you guys might be thinking, oh, these are special as well, and that this is definitely a sort of something that signifies that these are indeed like additive-free natural cigarettes. Thing is, though, paper foil in Mexico is actually a lot more common than you would think. Marlboros, all Marlboros use paper foil in Mexico. I don't know if all Lucky Strikes or if all British American Tobacco made cigarettes use paper foil, but paper foil is actually a lot more common in Mexico than it is in the United States. So just because this is paper foil actually is nothing too special when compared to other Mexican cigarettes, which is very interesting if I do say so myself. It's definitely an interesting change. You'd think like in Mexico that paper foil would be a little bit more uncommon because that's kind of the norm in the United States. But no, it's the exact opposite. Paper foil in Mexico is way more common than it is in the United States. It is very, very, very interesting. But nonetheless, this might be a little bit of a signifier that these are actually additive-free cigarettes. And with the whole recycling symbol thing and everything like that kind of thing, they're definitely trying to push the whole sort of additive-free, natural, good for the environment type of thing and everything like that kind of thing, I definitely have to say. But you know, the paper foil itself is nothing too special. I do want to acknowledge, just found that little tidbit interesting and thought y'all might as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just go over the texture. I'd have to say on the inside, it's very much out of a sort of wax paper, sort of like baking paper texture, and same on the outside. Let's go and see how easily it pulls out, just like that. Pulled out a little bit easier than not, and also a little bit more cleanly than not. I just had a dragonfly try to land on my leg. That scared me, I ain't gonna lie, y'all. But let's go and put the foil in my backpack just real quick. And I feel like I'm getting itchy again. I don't know why I'm getting itchy. Maybe it's because I'm sitting in the middle of a field of grass or something like that kind of thing. Maybe bugs are coming at me. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really noticed too many by any means. It might just be me kind of making stuff up in my own head. But without further ado, let's go ahead and now get one of these cigarettes all out of the pack, and let's go and take a look at what the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes actually look like, what they feel like, and what the quality of them is like. But I think I'm going to start with smell. Right off the bat, getting a little bit of a sort of I'd have to say the smell of these cigarettes is a little bit more mild when compared to the smell of the other Lucky Strike Origin cigarettes, for one. Interesting. I'm gonna get another one all out. So I'd have to say the smell I'm getting from this cigarette is, as a whole, very much that of a slightly spicy, earthy, almost cigar-y-like scent, with a little bit of sweetness under that, and maybe a little bit of cream or something like that kind of thing. Not exactly sure, but I do feel like I might be getting a little bit of a sort of creamy smell from this cigarette under the sort of slightly earthy, spicy sort of smell. But these cigarettes are much more mild smelling than not, I definitely have to say, so it is a little bit harder than not, excuse me, to really tell what the true smell is actually like. But I'm going to keep at it just for another minute. You know, I'd have to say very much that of a sort of slightly spicy, a very mild, slightly spicy, cigar-y, earthy smell with a little bit of cream and a little bit of a sort of other sort of sugary smell under that, almost like a milky sort of smell, I'd have to say, is kind of the smell I'm getting from this cigarette. Overall, definitely not a bad smelling cigarette by any means, just a little bit too mild for my personal preference, but very good smelling, if I do say so myself. I certainly would not mind having the smell of this cigarette as a candle, in all honesty. Let's go ahead and now take a look at the actual look of the cigarette itself, and we can see we just get a white filter, emphasizing the fact that this is indeed a light cigarette when compared to the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes. And we can see at the very bottom of the white filter right here, it just says Lucky Strike, all in black. Then under that text, we just get a blue line right there, representing the fact that this is indeed the Lucky Strike Blue Bright cigarette. And then under that blue line, which goes all the way around the cigarette filter, it just says Bright right there in black as well. And that is meant to emphasize the fact that these are indeed the Lucky Strike Blue Bright cigarettes once again. So you know exactly what these cigarettes are once you get one of these out of the pack. If you see a cigarette filter on the ground of this and you see the blue line, you're going to know immediately that these are indeed the Lucky Strike Blue Bright cigarettes that are a part of the Origins line of cigarettes. Interestingly enough, it doesn't actually say Origins on these cigarettes or anything like that kind of thing. It just says Lucky Strike, but either way, a nice little bit of a simple design, if I do say so myself. It's nothing super special. It's pretty much just informational, but it doesn't look bad by any means. And as a whole, I can't complain about the design by any means. I definitely have to say, you know, it just says Lucky Strike right there, get that blue line, and then just says Bright right there. And of course, all of that is on that white filter. And on the white filter right here, right above the Lucky Strike text itself, we get two lines of perforation. The holes are medium sized, I'd have to say. They're not super big. They're also not super small, but there are a lot of them. And there is two lines of perforation, not just one, two lines of perforation. So these are definitely going to be a little bit more airy than not, if I had to guess at least. One other thing to mention is that the paper of these cigarettes right here has no sort of horizontal lines going across it like cigarettes do in the United States. I'm just going to go ahead and get one of my Lucky Strike Blue cigarettes all out and see if I can just show y'all real quick. I don't know if it's actually going to show up on camera, but this is the Lucky Strike Blue, and we can see there are lines just kind of going all the way across, just horizontally like that across the cigarette. This cigarette right here has none of those lines. That could be a sign that this is not FSC compliant. Would not surprise me one bit, but some cigarettes from Mexico do indeed have vertical lines going across. These ones do not, though. These ones do not, which is quite interesting, if I do say so myself. You know, the paper is just paper. There's no sort of vertical lines going across or anything like that kind of thing. And the overall blend of the cigarette itself is very much that of a medium to bright blend, I want to say. Let's go ahead and just grab another one of the cigarettes out just to kind of take a look at what the blend is like. This one, yeah, very much a medium to a light blend. Not saying it's bright isn't wrong per se, but it's also not the most correct. The blend itself is not the brightest, I'd have to say, but it is definitely brighter than some other blends I've seen. So the name Bright is not wrong by any means. But you know, definitely a medium, light, bright blend of tobacco, I definitely have to say. Let me just go ahead and show it to y'all just real quick. We can see there's some bright aspects at the top and then some sort of darker aspects out there. The darker aspects combined with the sort of light aspects are what makes it a medium bright blend, or a medium light bright blend, I definitely have to say. Not blight blend. That would not be very good. I don't want to be gonna use blight in a sentence, but I honestly can't remember how to use blight in a sentence. Like, oh man, I'm kind of in a blight right now, or oh man, that's such a blight. It's a word, but I don't really know how to actually use it in a sentence. I don't think I ever have, in all honesty. But the overall quality of the cigarette seems pretty good, not bad quality by any means. and the filter itself has a pretty similar texture to most other cigarette filters I've had in the past. Well, overall the quality is good, the smell's pretty good, the look is pretty decent as well, and I'd have to say, you know, as a whole, looks pretty scrumptious. The paper itself is a little bit thinner than not. We can actually see some of the tobacco just kind of through the paper. I don't know if it's actually showing up on camera, but I can actually see some of the tobacco through the paper, which is quite interesting if I do say so myself. So the paper is not super thick by any means. You know, as a whole, as said, good quality, decent look, good smell, and overall, looks like a pretty scrumptious smoke if I do say so myself. But I do suppose there is only one way to find out just how good or just how bad the Lucky Strike Origins Bright Blue or Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico actually are. And that's to actually smoke one for myself and let y'all know and find out for myself how they are in general kind of thing. So I do suppose without further ado, I should probably go ahead and grab my lighter out of my pocket. Now, shouldn't I? I have my Zippo lighter with me today. And I think, without further ado, I've taken a little bit of a sip of water. I've gone over everything I wanted to say about the cigarette look and about the packaging and everything like that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's time for me to go ahead and get this cigarette right here all lit up. I think it's time for me to go and let you guys know how these cigarettes actually are. Without further ado, let's go and get this cigarette all lit up. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying. Right off the bat, getting a nice sort of slightly earthy, creamy, milky, sweet, almost brown sugar-like taste. And then I've taken another hit. I'm definitely getting a little bit of a sort of spicy taste in there as well. This cigarette is more airy than not, but it's actually not as airy as I thought it was going to be. It's not annoyingly airy by any means. There are some cigarettes out there that are very much annoyingly airy. This is airy, but it's not annoyingly airy, I'd have to say. The body is not badly sized by any means. Definitely not as big, and definitely is more airy than some of the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes that are a little bit heavier than this pack, but not a badly sized body by any means. Pretty typical for a cigarette of this strength profile, I'd have to say. Yeah, not a bad sized body by any means. A little bit airy, but actually not as much as I was really expecting and not as much as I was initially thinking as well. Excuse me. I'd have to say the airflow is perfectly fine, not constricted at all. Honestly, might kind of want to pack these cigarettes a little bit, but I did not pack them because I prefer to smoke cigarettes as the manufacturer intended them for my reviews. But I might pack this pack of cigarettes after the review is all done, I will acknowledge. Definitely does kind of feel like it could use a little bit of packing, but the airflow is perfectly fine. The draw is very much that of a medium light airy draw, I'd have to say. It's not heavier, it's not a heavier draw due to the perforation by any means. If anything, the perforation actually makes the draw a little bit lighter than not, which is very surprising. So I just got distracted. They're playing, there's a like baseball practice or something going on over there, and somebody just hit the ball, and then somebody almost caught it, but they didn't quite get it. Got a little bit distracted. But I'm multitasking right now. I'm smoking a cigarette, doing a cigarette review, and I'm watching baseball at the same time. Certainly no complaints on my behalf. But, you know, the draw is very much a medium, light, airy draw, with the airiness actually kind of making the draw a little bit lighter than not. Not a bad draw by any means. And while it is a little bit airier than not, it's not annoyingly airy by any means. I've definitely had much more airy cigarettes before that are much more annoying to smoke. Roughness and smoothness-wise, honestly, decent amount smoother than I thought they were going to be. Honestly, like a 2 out of 4. Definitely smoother than something like, let's say, an American Spirit for sure, and definitely smoother than the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes. And I'd have to say, strength-wise, these are definitely like a low 3 out of 4. Definitely not the strongest cigarettes I've ever had, but certainly not a slacker when it comes to strength either. These cigarettes do burn a little bit faster than not, though, I will acknowledge. When we get to the filter itself, it does get pretty thoroughly smoked with pretty thoroughly smoked with tar, pretty thoroughly stoked. I'm gonna cover that in just a minute. I'm gonna finish off the cigarette first. But that was the last that I had, so I'm gonna go and just stub that out on the ground just real quick. And I'm just gonna go ahead and now talk about just what the filter actually looks like after you smoke. So the filter itself does get pretty thoroughly smoked with the filter itself does definitely get a little bit thoroughly soaked with tar, but it's definitely a little bit more centralized in the middle, so we can tell that the perforation does do its job, but it does not do its job like super intensely. If it did do its job like super intensely, I would have to say that there would be some white going around the central bit of tar, but there's really no white. It's all yellow. The filter definitely does thoroughly soak up tar, to say the least. So the perforation, while it does do its job in kind of making the draw just a little bit more airy and making the cigarette a little bit smoother and making the cigarette just a little bit lighter as a whole, it definitely does not really dramatically affect the smoking experience and make the cigarette super light by any means. I definitely have to say, if it was a super light cigarette or just a light cigarette in general, we'd be seeing a line of pure white going around the tar in the center, but we don't see that. The filter is thoroughly soaked, and the filter starts right about where the blue line starts. I definitely have to say, just right about there where the blue line starts. So it is a little bit of a smaller filter than not as well. And the cigarette as a whole smoked a little bit faster than not. It was about I want to say a 4.5 to 5 minute smoke. So definitely a little bit of a faster smoke than not, but nothing faster than, let's say, a king size Marlboro or a Camel or something like that kind of thing. As a whole, my first ever experience with the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico was a more positive one than not. The taste I got from that first cigarette was very much that of a slightly creamy, I'd have to say, slightly sweet, airy, earthy, slightly spicy taste. With a little bit of a sort of milky taste in there, a little bit of brown sugar, I definitely have to say as well, maybe brown sugar molasses. Not super sweet by any means, very much a savory cigarette, but a very nice taste nonetheless. I do think I am going to have a second cigarette just to really focus on the taste and really just figure out what all the intricacies are when it comes to the taste and everything like that kind of thing. The body was definitely a little bit bigger than I honestly thought it was going to be. It was a little bit less airy than I thought it was going to be. Definitely very nicely sized for the strength level of the cigarettes. I'd have to say the airflow was perfectly fine. Definitely could use maybe a little bit of packing, though, I will acknowledge. The draw was very much that of a medium light airy draw, so definitely so a little bit lighter than not for sure, but had a little bit of significance to it, and was a little bit more airy than not, with the airiness kind of giving it a little bit of significance, I definitely have to say. The roughness smooth is very much a 2 out of 4, just a mid 2 out of 4, and strength wise very much a low 3 out of 4. These are very much not really a light cigarette per se. They are the lightest cigarette that is a part of the new Lucky Strike Origins line, but these are not really a light cigarette when compared to others on the Mexican market. These are more of a medium cigarette to full flavored cigarette, I'd have to say. You know, that's very much what these cigarettes are like as a whole, but I want to kind of think a little bit more about what the actual flavor of these cigarettes is like. So let's go ahead and get this pack all opened up once again. Let's go ahead and get another one of these cigarettes all out, and I'm gonna go and take a little bit of a sip of water, and then after that I'm gonna go ahead and get another Lucky Strike Origins, a blue bright cigarette all lit up, and I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys know what the taste really is like fully in depth. But without further ado, let's go and get back to smoking. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying. Let's grab a screenshot as well. Hopefully that will do for a screenshot. We will find out. But the taste at the very beginning of the cigarette is very much that of a slightly earthy, dirt-like, almost sort of barnyard-like taste with... I'm getting so distracted by the baseball game. You know, the taste at the very beginning is very much that of a... Yeah, I'd have to say the taste at the very beginning is very much that of a earthy, farmyardy, creamy, sweet, milky taste, with the milkiness having sort of a molasses brown sugar sort of sweetness to it. The sweetness is not overwhelming. It's more of a sort of, I'd have to say, savory, earthy taste as a whole. But there is a little bit of sweetness in there, which is very nice if I do say so myself. This cigarette has a sort of airy cigar-like taste to it, I'd have to say. And there's definitely a little bit of spiciness in there as well. The other Lucky Strike Origin cigarettes had a very similar taste. And really the only difference between all three of them is just the amount of perforation on the filter from what I can tell. The oranges, which are the heaviest ones, had like, I think just one small line of perforation, if any, I can't remember. The yellows, which are like the medium, had just like one line of perforation, and they were very much medium. And then these have 2 lines of perforation. And between all three of them, I'd have to say the oranges are like the heaviest tasting, the most spicy, the least airy, with these being the most airy and the least spicy. So if you like a sort of savory, mildly sweet cigarette, these are going to be for you. If you prefer sort of a savory, mildly spicy, sweet cigarette, I'd have to say the Lucky Strike Origins Orange are going to be for you. These are by no means bad cigarettes. The quality is really good. I'm not getting any sort of chemical, additive, or paper-like taste. And the taste as I continue smoking is still very much that same, I'd have to say the main overwhelming taste is that of that actually creamy, sort of milky taste, now that I'm really starting to pay attention. With an undertone of that spice, with a little bit of that, I had a little bit of a booger trying to fly out my nose. Just took that out, just off camera. My nose is now itchy. But, yeah, very much out of a sort of, the main taste is very much out of a sort of slightly sweet, sort of creamy molasses taste with a little bit of, yeah, sort of a creamy, milky, mildly sweet molasses sort of brown sugar taste with a slightly spicy, farmyardy, earthy, almost dirt-like, cigar-y undertone under that, with a little bit of airiness as well, of course. And that's very much what the taste of the cigarette is like as a whole. If you don't inhale the smoke, I just puffed on that like that was a cigar. If you don't inhale the smoke, the sort of cigar-y taste comes through much more intensely than not. And you do definitely as well get a much more spicy taste. And if you retrohale, everything combines just pretty well as a whole. And as you get towards the bottom of the cigarette, I definitely have to say that spiciness gets a little bit more intense as well. It's definitely, the sweetness is definitely much more intense at the very beginning. The spiciness is definitely much more intense at the very end. As a whole, you know, not too bad. Smoke's a bit fast for my personal preference, but, you know, not bad cigarettes at all. But what are my final thoughts on the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico? What are my final thoughts on this pack of cigarettes right here? Now that I finished off 2 of them. Do I like them? Do I not? Would I buy a pack of these with my own money? Yeah, I'd have to say I like these cigarettes. I do like these cigarettes. I don't think I like them as much as the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes, but they're still pretty solid smokes. And I would definitely buy another pack of these again. They've got a pretty nice strength to them. The strength could be a little bit heavier. I do think I would prefer just a little bit of a heavier strength in all honesty. But you know, not a bad smoke by any means. Not a bad smoke. Not too light for my personal preference, just not quite heavy enough for my personal preference either. But this pack will certainly be getting smoked quite quickly over the next couple days or so, more than likely. I think I'm going to finish off this pack quite quickly, probably in the next 2-3 days or so. And I am definitely looking forward to smoking the rest of this pack. They're good smokes. They burn a bit fast for my personal preference. I do think they need a little bit of packing, and I'm just going to go and pack them real quick just before I forget to do that. But, and how well do they pack down? Do they pack down well? They do pack down quite well. We can see it's definitely packed down a little bit more so than not now. And I'm expecting them to be a little bit better. Just being packed down just a little bit more so than not. But you know, overall, the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico, pretty solid smokes. Smokes I would buy again, but not smokes I think I would buy on a super regular basis. Just because when compared to the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes, they are probably my least favorite one. I'd have to say my favorite out of the three is probably the most full flavor one, the oranges, then the yellow, and then the blues. They're not bad smokes, and if you want an additive-free cigarette in Mexico, and you don't mind a little bit of airiness, and you want something that isn't like super heavy by any means, I think these cigarettes are definitely going to be a good go-to. They're just solid cigarettes as a whole that definitely do have a little bit of a unique taste to them, even when compared to something like, let's say, a Nats, or when compared to, like, let's say, an American Spirit. Especially, there's no American Spirit that really tastes quite like these, in my personal opinion. They definitely do have a more unique taste to them than not, when compared to other additive-free cigarettes I've tried in the past, and they do have a little bit of a sort of cigar-y taste to them. The most comparable cigarette I've ever had to them is the all-natural native cigarettes. Those cigarettes are probably the most comparable taste-wise to these cigarettes, which is quite interesting. But, you know, cigarettes I would buy again, for sure. Cigarettes I would buy with my own money again, for sure. Cigarettes I'm going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of, and cigarettes that I do enjoy more so than not. But not cigarettes that would be a regular buy of mine, just simply because, well, there's other cigarettes I prefer, in all honesty, and just because, well, the other Lucky Strike Origins cigarettes are a little bit better in my personal opinion. Just more to my preference. Not really better, just more to my personal preference. But still not bad smokes. What rating do I want to give these cigarettes right here? I'm thinking a very solid 3 out of 4. I'm thinking a very solid 3 out of 4, frankly put. Not bad smokes at all. Definitely not like the best cigarettes I've ever had. The Lucky Strike Origins Orange would be like a high 3 out of 4 for me, at least. I can't remember what rating I actually gave them, but in my personal opinion, very much a high 3 out of 4 when compared to the others. The oranges would be like a mid 3 out of 4, and these would be like a low 3 out of 4. Yeah. You know, not bad smokes. Definitely a cigarette I would buy again. For context, my rating scale goes from 1 to 4, with 1 being like, this is horrible, never buy this, and 2 being like, you know, it's okay. Might be to some people's preferences, but I don't like it. A 3 out of 4 is like, you know, this is pretty solid. I'm going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack, and, you know, maybe I'd buy a pack again if I was really feeling like it, but, you know, there's better cigarettes out there, and a 4 out of 4 is like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is a masterpiece, this is the best thing ever. For me, like, an American Spirit Black is like a 4 out of 4. An American Spirit Gray is like a 4 out of 4. An American Spirit Full Body Red is a 4 out of 4. The Nats Oranges, if I remember correctly, are 4 out of 4 as well. The Lucky Strike Origins Orange could be a 4 out of 4. I'd need to really smoke another pack again to really decide on that. But for the moment, I'm just going to be saying that those are a high 3 out of 4. These are very much a low 3 out of 4. There's something I would 100% buy again if I was kind of craving a lighter than not pack to kind of chain smoke when I'm drinking and stuff like that kind of thing. And overall, you know, pretty decent medium cigarettes, pretty decent medium strength cigarettes to say the least, and definitely just much more enjoyable than not as a whole. Yeah. You know, not bad smokes, not bad smokes. And if you're in Mexico, if you live in Mexico, or if you're looking at visiting Mexico, I definitely do think that if you're looking for a medium cigarette with no additives, this is going to be a good option for you. A medium strength cigarette with no additives, this is going to be your go-to in my personal opinion. But you know, overall, not bad smokes if I do say so myself. Well, I think that's pretty much all I had to say for this video today. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have tried these cigarettes before. If you guys have, what do you guys think of them? And if you guys have not, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these cigarettes, just based off of what I had to say in today's video. Certainly hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video today. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video where I smoked and reviewed the Lucky Strike Origins Blue Bright cigarettes from Mexico, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. box, and my second channel all in the description down below. Go check it all out. So next one, y'all, stay safe and peace and have a great one. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying?